She's out to get you.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started. My name's Tim Lane. So our next presentation is Back to Basics. Why can't we get this stuff right? From Jess Dodson. Jess is a customer engineer at Microsoft. She's based in Brisbane and has over 15 years experience in the management and architecture of identity and security system platforms, and a passion for fixing things and stubbornness to push people to get things right. Please join me in giving Jess a round of applause. Welcome her.
Hello. So this is Back to Basics. Now, the slide does say, why can't we get this stuff right? Why can't we get this shit right is pretty much it. It really is. This is basic stuff. So for those who don't know me or weren't listening to my intro at the keynote, my name is Jess Dodson, also known online quite prolifically as Girl Gems. So if you've ever come across someone who's purple-haired called Girl Gems, that's me. I am an ex-system administrator, so I come from an operations background, not so much a sec background. So it's a little bit interesting. I am now a customer engineer with Microsoft with a focus on identity and security, came from an AD background and just kind of fell into being a security engineer. So now I'm one of you somehow. So the cranky face that you can see on the slide, that is a pretty dead set warning that I'm pretty miffed about some of the stuff that I keep seeing when I'm going into organizations and businesses and companies and seeing some of the things that I'm seeing. I feel like a lot of this is very much common sense, but if it is common sense, then why isn't it being done? So if you see dodgy practices that you feel you are guilty of, don't worry. You're definitely not alone. So there are going to be things in here that will make you squirm, and I'm very sorry about that, but that is my intention. Think of this more as teaching you to reaffirm those beliefs that you have about the things that you should be doing properly in your organization. So I am your pre-lunch security entertainment, now with included memes. So we're not doing a lot of deep dive technical here. There is way too many that I'm going to be listing to go into heavily technically. But if you want to argue with me after the fact or have a talk to me on Twitter or yell at me about something I've missed, and I will have missed something, I know I will have, I can't include everything, please do so. So I've broken this down via the NIST framework. It makes it a little bit easier, and makes it a little bit easier to understand where we're placing some of these things. Most of my focus is as a blue teamer, I guess, on the identify and protect space, because that's where we need to be spending all of our proactive effort. There is a little bit of love for detect with a couple of tidbits for respond and recover. Now, don't stress about writing anything down. I mean, take photos if you like, I don't mind. But there is a checklist that you can go and look at. There's a URL at the very end that you can use to be able to grab all of those and tick most of them off, hopefully, or use them to then do some better work inside your organizations. So, onwards. I identify that we are really bad at identifying things. Do you actually know what you have? Is your asset system up to date? Do you know the number of systems you have, the operating systems they're running, the type of applications that are running on them, the type of appliances you have? How many of you can put your hand up now and tell me that you are 100% sure that your asset system is up to date and accurate? Yep, that's what I thought. So make sure that you're doing audits and checking so that you know what you have. It's not a set and forget. Your audit system will change. Like, your systems change. They are constantly changing. I am yet to go into an organization like what I just asked you, who has an asset system and an audit system that is up to date and they know all of their inventory. Without having that inventory, without knowing what you've got, it's incredibly difficult for you to protect your systems. How can you protect it if you don't know about it? And worse, if you don't know about it, how are you supposed to recover it? Single points of failure for tech are bad. We all know that. But it is way, way worse when it comes to people. One person who knows everything and is the single point and source of truth for everything is not a good place to be. They may feel really good in themselves, but it is not good for an organization. I'm sure we have all worked somewhere or been in an organization where there has been a point person who is the person who knows everything. In the last organization I worked for, his name is Ken. Hi, Ken. This person is the repository of all knowledge when it comes to your technical systems, or at least some subsection of those technical systems. And we need to make sure that we are getting that information out of them. They are literally what I term as walking wikis. They have all of this knowledge in their head. They don't have any of it written down. And the only way that we can access it is by asking them specific questions. So what happens when that person gets sick or goes on leave or is a contractor and their contract doesn't get renewed or leaves your company and goes and works for a competitor? We need to make sure that they are sharing that knowledge. We need to make sure that we are giving them time to be able to actually put that knowledge down on paper and provide others in your organization with that knowledge. Having single point SMEs is a bad position to be in just from the perspective of business continuity as well. But on the flip side, if everyone is responsible, then no one is responsible. So you need to make sure that your business owners and your system owners are actually owning their own risk and owning the risk of their systems. And they have to understand that risk. It's no good being just a checkbox of, yeah, totally, I'm looking after that one. And then it's more of a, yeah, I accept the risk, except when shit goes wrong and then I'm blaming you. And that tends to be what happens in organizations. Business owners will take the risks and they will accept those risks until things go wrong. So making sure that we have written down the risks to those systems, we need to understand why those risks are in place. Having risk registers. A risk register is your friend. You then have evidence as to this is the risk and this is who I told and they're the ones who said, absolutely go ahead. We need accountability. And more than that, and I'm hoping I've got a few managers in the room here, we need managers to protect their staff. Do not blame your interns. So just because it was right doesn't mean it is still right. If it's not broken, don't fix it mentality is something that I have butted my head against quite a lot in organizations that I have worked for and that I have gone into to help from a consultant perspective. And it's a mentality that really needs to change because it removes efficiency. It removes effectiveness. You know, I hate the word, but it removes innovation. Such a buzzword and horrible thing to say. But it removes the way that we can change systems to make things better. So look at ways to improve the systems that you have rather than just staying with the status quo. Just because you've always run a system on Windows Server 2000 doesn't mean you should always run a system on Server 2000. Write the thing. If it's in your head, write it down. I know that it's tedious. I know that it's boring. I know that it's time consuming, but documentation is so vital and so damn important. And we just don't see enough of it in our organizations from everywhere in IT, not just within security, but also within our IT operations and development work. So document absolutely everything. No matter if you think it's not important, it will be important to someone. Someone doesn't know that piece of information that you know. If you've had to do something, write it down. If you've had to change something, write it down. In security breaches, this kind of documentation is invaluable, but it's not just in security breaches. It can also be BAU, but you need that documentation when you are trying to work backwards when the proverbial hits the fan. Educating users, from my perspective, is still our weakest link. We need to do it in a more meaningful way, and we need to do it in a way that involves our users without patronizing them. So we need, as we talked about in the keynote, we actually need our users to be more literate in what we are doing from a security perspective. So we as techs complain about our end users all the time. We really do. We bitch about them, saying that they're not doing the right things, or they're being insecure, or they're bypassing our security procedures. We wouldn't have as much to complain about if we actually educated them properly and actually brought them along with us. So there is no such thing, in my eyes, as a stupid question. And it's something I say to all of my customers, to anyone who talks to me. There is no such thing as a stupid question. There is a question that you need an answer to. Just because I know the answer doesn't mean that it's stupid. So make sure that your users understand that you are approachable and you will not patronize them and demean them for asking those questions. Spend your time with them. Understand what it is that they do, and then work out how what you do fits with that. Security and usability is a really fine line. There is no point putting security in place if it's going to defeat usability. Our users need to be able to do their jobs, and we can't prevent them from doing that, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose of our organizations. Yes, we need to make sure we're doing things securely, but we need to make sure that we are bringing our users along and we understand what it is that they are doing as well. So now that we've identified things, let's go and sort of maybe protect them a bit. Okay, this is my big bugbear. When we talk about protecting our cloud infrastructure, everyone immediately jumps onto the new and shiny and sexy and wants to play around with the cool things. No, bad, stop it, naughty, leave it alone. As I said this morning, before looking at that, we really need to go back to basics and look at the systems that are connected to our cloud infrastructure. Pretty much everyone is running, from what I can see, in some form of hybrid mode. Who here is running 100% pure cloud? No one. So we've got this hybrid model where everyone is focusing on the security and the shiny of what's up in the cloud, and no one's focusing on their on-prem infrastructure at all. So coming from my background working in Microsoft, everyone wants to look at Azure AD and all the shiny stuff that comes with Azure AD, except they're hybrid and they've got Azure AD Connect, and their on-prem Active Directory is still running on Server 2008 R2 boxes, so it's weak as shit. So we need to make sure we're protecting what our systems are connected to. Find your weakest links. We are, without a doubt, the worst hypocrites when it comes to what we tell our users to do. So we tell our users to do one thing, and then we go and do something completely different. If you are an admin, any kind of admin, you need to be eating your own dog food. You need to be doing the same thing as your users. So if you are telling users they can't have administrative rights on their local workstations, bet your ass you can't have local admin rights on those workstations as well. If you are telling users they can't install specific applications because they are insecure, and then you're installing those applications yourself on your workstation, you bet your ass if I come into your organization, I'm going to get pretty shitty at you. If you expect your users to do it, you have to be willing to do it. In fact, you have to be happy to do it. Because if you can prove that you can do your job as a security or a systems or a network engineer, architect, administrator with these security restrictions in place, then they can certainly do it as well. So it feeds back that loop of ensuring your users understand why we're putting these in place. Now, the other one that I see with this is C-levels. Please, for the love of God, stop setting password does not expire on your C-level accounts. I don't want to see CIOs and CEOs and CISOs with password never expires. They are, in my eyes, VIP sensitive users. They should have just as much restriction on their accounts as our administrative accounts have. I didn't really think this one needed to be said. I really didn't. But it is public knowledge. Back in 2018, an Australian government agency had a penetration test done, and they were popped within 10 minutes because all of their appliances had the default password of admin and password set. So please change your passwords. Do not use defaults. Do not use crap passwords. Do not use the same passwords everywhere. I just want people to be using secure passwords, or even better, go passwordless. Make my day. I just want to make sure that we're not having insecure authentication. We've got password protection solutions. Use them. And tied back to something that I've said previously, if an intern has the ability to set a critical system password and sets it incorrectly and insecurely, that doesn't mean that that intern is crap. That means that your organization has screwed up your user onboarding and your security training and your security monitoring. When we're looking at storing our credentials, particularly things that are shared credentials, making sure that we are storing them securely. So there are password managers. We have free ones, we have paid ones, we have cloud ones, we have ones that are on-prem if you are paranoid about the cloud. I don't care what you use. I am not in sales. I am 100% an engineer. Just use something. As long as it's not like an Excel spreadsheet or a Post-it note, like that's not password management. And tied to this is, please don't block the use of password managers. The number of organizations that I see who block this within their orgs, all you are doing is forcing your users to create insecure passwords. Allow password managers to be used in your organizations. Tied to this one as well, with shared credentials, I don't want to see generic accounts in your high-level administrative groups. I don't want to see them there anywhere. Any administrative account that is in any of your high-level admin or root groups should be a named user so that we can track that back in audit and know who did it, especially service accounts. I don't want to see service accounts in high-level admin groups. They don't need to be in there. Get them out. We've got the ability to work out what permissions they need. And if you have an application or a system that tells you they need, from my perspective, coming from Windows land, domain admin or global admin, no, bad, slap them. They do not need that access. Find out the exact permissions they need and give them that and only that. You do not need root, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Tied to your service accounts as well is servicing your service accounts. So when was the last time you reset your service account passwords? When was the last time you did an audit on your service accounts to work out where they are actually being used? And are they being used for what they were originally intended for? How can you be sure that an admin that left 10 years ago that knew that password off by heart, because that's the account he used to log into to be able to do everything, doesn't still have access to your systems using that account? Because that's why we have RBAC. Role-based access control is your friend, so please use it. I don't want to see top levels easiest. I can't be bothered working out what permissions I need, so I'm just going to go for the very top level and go away with it. An example from literally earlier this week, a customer that I attended. Your entire MSP of 40-something people do not need to be global admins in your Azure tenancy permanently. No. Make sure that you are fine-tuning the rights based on what your users need. Have identity audits performed. Make sure that you are doing some form of privileged access management so you can go through and make sure when a user changes roles, the permissions that they have may not be the permissions they need going forward. Make sure you are reviewing all of their permissions. And when it comes to role-based access control, and this one is very close to my heart, make sure you are limiting your privileges. So high rank doesn't necessarily equal high levels of access. Just because a manager is a manager of a team of administrators that has this high level access doesn't necessarily mean they get that access themselves. So speaking from my personal position, I have actually been in that position where I was part of an identity team who had domain access, domain admin rights over about 7 different domains. We had a new manager come in who said, you guys all have domain admin rights. I should have domain admin rights. 2 months of fighting and nearly losing my job because I refused to do it. Just because you are a manager doesn't necessarily mean you need those rights. Now, it doesn't come down to a matter of trust. Although to be fair, I didn't trust the guy. But it does come down to a matter of who is responsible for that system. The way that I tend to look at these kind of privileges are, if you are not the person who is being called at 2 o'clock in the morning to fix that system when you are either hungover or very tired, then you do not need that access. And tied to that as well, managers, trust your staff. You hired them for a reason, right? Trust them to do the job that you have hired them to do. If you don't trust them, why did you hire them in the first place? If you can put MFA on it, put MFA on it. I mean, it goes without saying, we need to have MFA on things. Now, I am not a fan of SMS as a form of 2FA, but look, SMS MFA is better than no MFA. I'm more than happy to have whatever MFA you are willing to give me at this point. And I understand that for a lot of organizations, using MFA might be seen as very difficult and very daunting. So start small. Start with a pilot group. Start with your administrators, or start with your C-levels, or start with a small group of users that you want to protect and then work outwards. You're better off starting somewhere. And for us as administrators, and particularly security admins, this isn't just applicable to work. You are likely known to work for the organizations that you work for, and you are known that you have specific levels of access. So MFA all of your personal accounts. I'm thinking Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, GitHub, Reddit, Slack, all of those that are personal for you, MFA them. So that way you don't have people trying to take advantage of your identity. Account segregation still isn't being done. I am seeing so many organizations that have administrators who have a single account. That's it. Everything they do is from one single account. Now, this is very basic from my understanding. We need to have, at a minimum, 2 accounts. Normal user account that does normal user things, administrative account that does administrative user things. Depending on the level of privileges and access you have in your organization, you may have many accounts. It doesn't even have to be limited to 2. It could be as many as 5 or 6. I understand that's painful. That's why we have password management, remember? Look at using privileged identity management, which is an even better way of going down this path. No one has permanent level access. You want that access, you request it, you get given it, you do your work, it gets revoked. So no one has that access permanently. When is a firewall no longer a firewall? When stupid devs put any rules in, and it really drives me nuts. So please don't turn off your software firewalls. I like seeing software firewalls put in place. Software firewalls are really beneficial. The logging they provide can be really helpful, but it is no use to me when an any rule is put in place. I understand that for some organizations, it is mandated that they have to have a firewall on, so you can't turn it off. So the easiest thing to do is let's throw an any in there and see what happens. Testing happens, everything works, and the any rule never gets removed. So please go back and remove your any rules and find out the ports that you actually need on those machines. I really didn't think that needed to be said, but again, I actually came across this one not 2 weeks ago. Endpoint protection. It's not just for your endpoints. We need to make sure that we're putting it on our servers as well, and make sure that we've got our exclusions listed correctly and putting in documentation around what we are excluding on those machines. And don't just exclude everything, because that kind of, again, defeats the purpose of having it in place. You don't want to make your systems sick. I mean, Look how sad it is. Looks very sad. The other one with this is your personal machines. Again, it comes back to you as a personal individual within your organization that has a level of access, making sure that you have endpoint protection and malware protection on your own machines. The number of admins that I know that don't have any of that on either their mobile phones or on their personal devices because they'd never do anything stupid. Raise of hands here. Who has local administrative privileges on their home machine using the same credentials that they usually log on with? Come on, I know it's more than that, for sure. So yes, if you've got local admin rights, it means that stuff can run. So make sure that you are putting endpoint protection on your home machines as well. Encryption. If you can turn it on, just turn it on. I mean, to me, this is a real no-brainer. It's most of the time a checkbox. Just tick the checkbox. Turn on the encryption. Application whitelisting. This is a tough one because I do understand how hard it is to put in place. So it is in the ASD Essential 8. It is something that we should all be doing because we're all doing the Essential 8 because we're all good little security citizens. But it can be very time consuming. It is a very good line of defense. And I understand that when it comes to workstations in particular, it can be very difficult to do that fine tuning of exactly what applications you want to whitelist. So how about we skip the workstations and go for our servers instead? Because the applications on your servers should not be changing. So we should be putting at least application whitelisting on our servers. It's also really good for catching people doing incredibly daft things on servers. Again, another example from personal experience, installing TreeSize Pro on a domain controller to scan all of the file servers. Just no, that should never be running on a domain controller, ever. And as part of this learning tale around that, part of the reason why that actually happened is because your administrators may not have access to the tools they need to do their job on the systems you've given them. So give them legitimate workable jump boxes that have all of the tools they need, or make sure they've got those tools available on their privileged administrative workstations. Please make sure we're patching our systems, not just operating systems, but our appliances, any of the applications that are running on our systems. We just need to be patching. I am very tired of going into orgs and particularly government organizations and seeing like 1 year patching cycles. No one wants to be installing 1 year's worth of patches on their systems. No one. Bad things will happen. So have a regular patching cycle. Have things being updated frequently. You're going to be missing out with security vulnerabilities that are open on those machines if you do not apply those updates. Physical security is still a thing. So as we determined here, not everyone here is running pure cloud. We are still running in a hybrid mode. We do still have physical machines inside data centers, and they're not always in colo data centers. Some of them still exist in our own organizations. So who has access to those physical servers? If a bad guy has unrestricted physical access to your computer, it's not your computer anymore. So don't have servers running under desks. Make sure they are secured and monitored. And again, personal experience working with government. I've seen it happen. A remote office disaster had struck. There'd been a natural disaster in the area. The server was literally underneath someone's desk and someone just walked in and walked out with a domain controller. So make sure you are securing your physical systems because, again, it comes down to that weakest link. So we've done identify, we've done protect, and now we're on to detect. So we are detecting that something has happened or we think something might have happened. Please pick and choose your logs and make sure that you are grabbing all the right ones. You don't know what you can't see. So you can't track it back if you don't have access to it. So event logs, when we are talking system or security or application specific, appliance logs, I don't care what kind of logs, just make sure that we are grabbing hold of those logs, that we are storing them somewhere. So not just from a security perspective, even from a BAU troubleshooting perspective, those logs can be invaluable to your administrators, to your end users when we are trying to work out what's going on in their systems. The other thing is making sure we are collating them and putting them somewhere, because our logs are rolling over far too quickly. They do take up a lot of disk, of course. So making sure that we are putting them somewhere that we can look at them and we can understand what's going on in those systems. Now, the other big one around this, and Sarah Young will be very happy that I mentioned this, collection is not detection. So just because we're collecting them, that's great, that's awesome. I'm glad we're putting them somewhere. But unless someone's actually looking at them, they are doing us no good. So make sure that we are actually looking at these logs. Now, again, I come from that Microsoft perspective. I am somewhat biased in the tools that I use. But again, I don't care what you're using as long as you are using something. Insider threats are still very much a thing. We are still seeing them. So we need to keep watch. And that includes making sure that we ourselves are being watched and that the stuff that we are doing is being monitored and audited to make sure that we are still doing the right things. So we need to have monitoring over our SIEM and SOAR tools. We need to make sure that any changes that are being made in those systems is logged so that we can actually determine what has happened. We do have very smart attackers that will know that the easiest way to avoid detection is to disrupt your security systems. So making sure that we are monitoring them in a way that we can actually see when they are tampered with. You've got a break glass account. Monitor for its usage. It should never be used, so make sure that you're paying attention to it. You've got SIEM rules in place. If you've got specific SIEM rules that are around your monitoring solutions and security solutions, make sure that you are monitoring for when they change. You've got security automation put in. Make sure that you are monitoring and logging when that automation is being run. You want to know when your logs are being deleted and being purged. You need to monitor for it. It comes back to we are not infallible. We can do the wrong thing. And unfortunately, we do have rogues and we do have bad actors who may decide that they want to do the wrong thing for one reason or another. So we need to make sure that we can catch that before too much damage is done. Fine-tuning of your monitoring systems. This is another one of my big bugbears that I come across. There is no use in alerting for everything. You will drown in noise. You will not see anything of value if you are not actually tuning your systems. So you need to make sure that what is being sent and what is being seen, it's legitimate, it's actionable, it's something that's actually important, and you're seeing as few possible false and benign positives. And you understand the difference between a false and a benign positive. We need to make sure that we're not just standing up new tools because we've seen a new tool. So the number of times that I go into organizations, they've got this whiz-bang monitoring tool. They've got 90% of their systems monitored using this whiz-bang one, and then a brand new one comes out and they're like, oh, shiny, new one. And they use that for the remaining 10% and they get 90% of the way through that 10%, and then another one comes out in perpetuity. So we need to make sure that we are fine-tuning our monitoring systems themselves. We need to cut down the number of systems that we are using. We shouldn't have a dozen or so. We should have one that we can look at and look into that one to be able to find all of the information that we need. So we've detected stuff. So how do we go about protecting it and recovering it? Please back up all your things. Backup is really important. And when it comes to backup, again, it's teaching you guys how to suck eggs. Backups are great. Backups are wonderful. You can see the automation and you can see all the logs that go, yes, the backup has succeeded. You need to test your backups. So a backup is useless unless we can successfully restore it. So please make sure that you're testing your restores. We are seeing ransomware and crypto still out there. So we need to make sure that we are checking our backups. Planning is key. Have a plan, any kind of plan. And just like backups, please test that plan. So we need to make sure that we understand who we need to speak to, what systems are critical, remembering we identified everything, we have an asset system that's up to date, and making sure that you're following that plan. And also make improvements and updates to that plan as needed and necessary, because a plan that was functional 5 years ago is likely not going to be functional now. For starters, good chance most of the people that you would contact may not still be there. Perform tabletop exercises. So there was a CrikeyCon attendee that I spoke to when I gave this talk at CrikeyCon who suggested that one, and that is a great one. It gives you the ability to test in relative safety how your plan will run. When an incident occurs, managers, back off. I don't want to see managers standing around their security operations staff or their operations staff trying to work out what's going on. No one works under that kind of pressure with 7 people standing all around of them. And I have been in that situation. You need to follow your own processes, designate a person. That's why we have incident managers, and let them be your point of contact. It is okay to screw up. Everyone does. It is inevitable. You will screw up at some point. So own your own mistakes. Don't hide them. Don't minimize them. Own up to them. Help fix them. And it's going to make you more trustworthy and prove that you are more part of a team than if you were to try and hide it. The big one for that, though, is organizations who play the blame game. So I want to make sure that managers aren't playing the blame game when it comes to when things go wrong. You need to foster that level of accountability in your staff to know that they are not going to have their head roll if something goes wrong. Piggybacking perfectly off the last point, ask for help when you need it. It's not possible to know everything. You can't do it all by yourself. That's why we work in teams. It isn't possible for you to have all of that knowledge in your head. You need to get help from other people, and it is okay to ask for help. And find your tribe. So I have a very lovely group of humans that are my nerd tribe, and I wanted to give a huge thank to those people. So there's a couple of people. Bronwyn, she gave me some fantastic ideas for this talk. Charlie Marie was my very first test audience when I first gave this back in February. Heidi for poking me with a sharp stick to actually submit this talk to AusCERT. And then AusCERT for giving me a chance to actually come and talk here. This is my very first AusCERT conference, and they've got me as a speaker, which is just insane. So make sure you have your own tribe and find the people who will help lift you up. Again, you can't do it all yourself. So this is the link that I was mentioning that links to all of the things that we discussed with lovely little checkboxes that you will all tick because you're all awesome human beings. So please take note of that one. It is a very short one. Girl Gems Back to Basics. That's why it's got that cute URL. So hopefully we can now go off and secure all of our things because we are getting the basics right. So now I'm happy. So that's pretty much it. The fact you haven't yelled at me or gotten stroppy at me means that you're very awesome people. So thank you very much. If you think I have missed something, and I'm sure I have, if you think there is something that I should add into this list or into the list that's up on my website, let me know. I do not mind constructive criticism. I am more than happy to add to this. So come and have a chat to me at lunch or at the dinner tonight or yell at me on Twitter. That's totally fine too. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jess. That was great. Really good presentation. You did get a comment, best AusCERT presentation so far yet. So, and I have to agree with that. Really good. Even though we're talking about soaring and automation, it's those basics that we still need to get right. You can't sort of reinforce them enough. So thanks again, Jess.